The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from.
Here's another idea. The unconscious mind is the spectator to the conscious mind. Most people, or like you most likely, believe that the conscious mind appears to be the observer because it narrates and explains and claims ownership of whatever is going on in your awareness. You do something and then have this thought in your head that it is you doing so, and then you can say, I'm walking right now, I'm going and getting something to eat. And then what you believe is that this is you and you made this choice. But in actuality, your entire mind has pre-decided that you were hungry because it is calibrating whatever is going on in your nervous system and in your body way before you're aware of it. Your unconscious mind calibrates when you are getting hungry, when you are getting sleepy, when you are in need for more social validation, when you follow your dreams or pursue your addictions. There are calculations happening within you in incredible speed, and you are not really witnessing them. You cannot actually look at them. You do not actually understand how they function and how they happen. So how the hell is this supposed to be the real observer? Well, what is going on is that in order for the brain to do these calculations, the brain must be witnessing everything. It must understand in very quick succession what is going on in any point in time. And then it calculates the right response according to itself, and then feeds it to the conscious mind, which is the part that you can actually consciously observe and witness. And then you, as the conscious observer, believes it was his own idea. You identify with whatever thought or action your unconscious mind spit out. And this layer underneath is quiet. It usually doesn't feel like a thing at all. You might feel actually quite disconnected from this idea if you're only operating from your own consciousness. And in a way, the conscious mind is really an actor in a play, like a sort of publicist who tries to keep a good aesthetic and a good frame for everybody. And the unconscious mind, in a paradoxical way, is also the audience. So the unconscious mind is the internal audience, and society, your friends, your family, other people is the external audience. And the unconscious tries to kind of manage both of them at the same time. So the unconscious is both the editor of the play and an audience to the play itself. But it hides the fact that it is an audience to the play itself and only feeds you the conscious output that you are aware of. Self-image is the script that tells you as the actor of your play what must be performed. And then you have this vision of who you are. And this vision seems like a reality, when in actuality it has been pre-calculated as just a sort of coherent mechanism in your unconscious or in your own unconscious. Your ego finds itself in the unconscious. These are complexes in your own mind that try to protect the play and how you behave in order to not really see everything that is going on. The ego denies recognition. It denies that it already knows what is happening. You can see this in all sorts of situations. People pretend they are not seeing something they are clearly seeing. People pretend they're not being dishonest or kind of diffusing the truth of the matter. People distract and deny all the time. And it's not that they are maliciously lying, it's they actually believe that they're telling the truth. And it would absolutely destroy them if they were to recognize that they're not. The conscious mind performs an elaborate refusal to acknowledge what is going on in the unconscious. It's like a one-way street for most people. Like the unconscious calculates, gives something to the conscious mind, and then the conscious mind refuses to move this layer back and just performs whatever has been told as what it needs to do. Denial is therefore not simply absence as some sort of absence of knowledge, but it is consciousness staging ignorance in front of a mind that already knows enough to recognize that it's pretending and that it actually knows what's going on. Self-deception is the conscious mind performing ignorance for an unconscious mind that already knows. If you are witty with people and you have good social charisma and you know how to kind of do politics and get like a good aesthetic around people, then you know deeply that everything that everybody really wants is to just confirm their own self-image of themselves. And people want to do so at face value, meaning that they want to be seen on the superficial layer for what the conscious mind sees. So if you have a self-image that is being fed to the conscious mind, you want other people to validate that image on the superficial layer from the conscious mind. In a way, you're staging or presenting evidence for other people to kind of verify or rarefy, better said, that whatever your conscious mind perceives is the truth. And in this mechanism, you kind of pretend to be what you're presenting as. And this is what's so fundamentally inauthentic about our modern culture or just modern society. We are pretending that this superficial layer of our conscious presentation is the real me or the real us. And then it treats the external audience, like other people in your family, friends, relationships, as kind of the validation mechanism. And then their emotional response is proof that your conscious identity is real and that you do not need to investigate whatever lie your unconscious mind has fabricated. The ego is a social construct, and it is sort of a private spectator that needs kind of a social view of things in order to kind of solidify the fact that it doesn't need to look at itself. Other people's judgments become what you are. And this becomes internalized to a point that even when there's no external audience, your unconscious and conscious mind keep up the performance of never really looking at yourself and not acknowledging who you really are. And then you are alone and still kind of are worried about what other people might think of you for certain thoughts that you're having. I noticed when I started to question my belief systems that when I started to question, certain things, that I felt judged from other people that weren't actually in the room with me at all. Like, what would my parents think if I thought that? What would the social media influencer think if I thought that? What would my friends think if they knew that I thought that? Or if I liked that or did that, or whatever belief it is or action it is that you're kind of judging yourself for. And then I noticed that my belief systems were a social mechanism. They were there to manage the perception that other people have of me, and at the same time, the perception that I have of myself. So the desire to be understood is really to be seen by another person for how you are when you have your mask off, which is the desire to be seen for your unconscious parts. The parts that you do not want to look at yourself is exactly what makes you connect with other people. And this is why being open and honest with another makes you feel vulnerable, because you might be able to express something that you only looked within yourself kind of half-heartedly and don't fully accept, but you can at least verbalize it. And then you'll see from other people that it's actually completely fine and you're being accepted and tolerated and respected for stuff that you thought is unacceptable about yourself. And this is where genuine connection forms. It's when two people can meet themselves on the level of the unconscious, to be acknowledged for all these little things that we feel are shameful when we are witnessed in this way. And this is where kind of social anxiety wants to not go and what it tries to protect all the time. It's kind of knows that there's like a room full of observers all the time. And it is both internal and external. But when you are in a social setting and you're anxious about how you're being perceived, you are actually anxious about seeing yourself and then externalizing this anxiety onto other people. But the primary audience is really inside. Other people's faces and reactions just become a mirror of your internalized fears. And this is really what projection is. You do not see the other people's genuine thoughts, genuine feelings. You're not talking to the other person. You're talking to your own unconscious and trying to manage how much you see about yourself. Social anxiety is the unconscious mind performing, social anxiety is the conscious mind performing for an unconscious audience while using other people's I've just said that before. Cut. My entire goal, I want to build a society. I want to be the seeds that builds a community and a society of people who can be open and honest about all of this stuff, who do not need to cower in shame, who can really pursue truth and express themselves in a non-judgmental manner. Because this entire mechanism is really the bane of modern society, of how much we lie and deceive each other, how much we hate each other and don't expect and don't accept who we really are. And this is really the ethos of my community that I'm launching, that you can enter as one of the first 25 people that I'm letting in if you fill the survey in my Substack. It will be a paid private community. And the moment this community launches, my ego audits will also increase in price. So if you're also interested in that, then I'd recommend you check that out. What makes this entire mechanism even more complicated is that it's not just about what other people think of you that makes you hide yourself, but it's the addictive complexes within your subconscious, which make all of this even more complicated because it makes it seem like that the unconscious is your enemy. You have a ton of patterns that you keep repeating that your unconscious is kind of like going in a loop in, like the same calculations leading to the same responses, the same information being fed to the same conscious, and then you're in these loops with the same kind of learned behavior patterns that you feel like you cannot break because for whatever reason, a part of your mind keeps telling you to do the same stuff. So the spectator of your unconscious that does these calculations is also kind of like a director, and it might feel like a dictator. Like you have no choice but to obey it. And this is the mechanism of attachment and believing in the identification of those narratives. So you have unconscious calculations that become conscious and then performed as your identity through narratives. Then the unconscious witnesses is sort of like desire or impulse that it immediately feeds to the conscious. Then the conscious identifies it immediately, and through this identification shapes a certain performance or act in order to not see this entire calculation operating. In this way, it always is a one-way street, because if you were to stop and pause, and instead of reacting externally, if you instead of reacting externally, you would look inward, you change the entire dynamic. Then you were to use your conscious mind to look at the unconscious. And now there's a sort of metacognition going on where you don't really know where does one part of me begin and where does the other part end. And this means that at the end of the day, you are still one and the same person, right? Despite me clearly making this division here, this division isn't exactly real, because in any case, both of them are you. And these are the patterns that you have cultivated in your mind throughout many, many years. And every decision that you have ever made is part of the architecture that now functions the way it functions. But then on the other hand, you might feel like that you are not to blame, because clearly there are many complexes in your mind that almost all have their own agenda, and all of them have kind of sort of their own actors and audiences that are fighting within each other. And both parts kind of perform for a sort of imaginary self that you can never find. This is why witnessing yourself always remains to be the most fundamental spiritual practice, which I also talked deeper about in my last video about attention being like the core mechanism. Because if you truly look at how all of this stuff functions and you become conscious of your unconscious patterns, then all of a sudden the conscious and the unconscious become one. If you look at both sides honestly, then you reconfigure your unconscious mind in a way that it stops lying to you, because it notices there's no need to lie anymore. There's no need to protect these complexes that have been developed over time. And then everything flows easily, because there's no part just going as like a one-way street. And yes, you can never really inspect your unconscious in the same clarity that you can your conscious, in the sense that you don't really know all the intricacies and complexities in which the brain operates. Like, I don't even know how I'm finishing this sentence right now. It actually amazes me that I can record these videos in the first place. And there's a sort of awareness that happens on like both sides of the coin, where you kind of acknowledge that the idea of freedom of choice is also somewhat a complex that, a part of you is telling you in order to feel in control, which then often is actually this externalized impulse to just react out of sort of need. And then you kind of misidentify your impulses as a sort of freedom, when it's precisely these impulses that are the lack of control, because you're not taking the time to look at them honestly. And in the same way, if you believe that there's no freedom of choice here at all, and it's all just this automated mechanism, well, then what about the ability to be aware of what is happening, and then noticing that you actually prefer another type of reaction? And then the question of choice starts to pretty much dissolve, and all you can do is really witness with honesty and notice that the more you witness everything that you instinctively try to reject and instinctively try to ignore, all of a sudden everything starts to become very coherent and clear. In spiritual awakening, it is precisely a lot about these complexes that get revealed to you, to the extent that you suddenly awaken to the condition that you find yourself in, and how much everything has basically shaped you into this person that you are right now, and that you might be in kind of a fucked up situation depending on in which situation you are at. But that it is also true that if you've gotten yourself into this calibration, you can also figure out how to get out of it. If there's clearly a mechanism there that communicates between one part of the brain to the other part of the brain, and you can truly see how it functions, then awareness of the thing can dissolve the pattern. Denial is always the mechanism of some unconscious witness noticing that there's something that it doesn't want to see. So even if you believe that you don't know what is going on in your brain, a part of your brain knows. And if a part of your brain knows, it can be made conscious. The internal audience can be made conscious. And by doing so, you become the internal audience with full awareness. And then, almost like magic, the external audience starts to conform to your internal vision of yourself. Suddenly, being witnessed as somebody you're not, meaning being judged as somebody you're not, doesn't bother you anymore because it doesn't actually reflect your internal audience. Suddenly, connecting with other people and having very meaningful relationships becomes a lot easier because you're not trying to manage the perception that they have of you. You're just showing yourself for who you are, and then also making it a lot easier for them to show how they are, and then both can be vulnerable and truly connect on this like deeper unconscious layer. And then all of a sudden, all audiences fade away.